Hey everyone, love Halloween, but just tired of all the sugar. So today we're gonna make a focaccia, a Halloween themed focaccia. From black olive spiders to peppery jack-o'-lanterns. Oh, I totally forgot. There's also these great mushroom skulls. Check this out. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make our focaccia dough because we're gonna put that in the fridge and it needs to just sit there and ferment for quite a long time. So we're gonna mix together our dry ingredients. We're starting off with some bread flour. Now, I have some tips at the end of this video on how to store flour, so be sure to check those out. So we're gonna start off with our bread flour, and then we're gonna add in our salt and some yeast. And we're gonna mix that all together. Oh, and I also have a hack, so stay tuned towards the end. I'm gonna show you this great hack for how to proof yeast. Then we're gonna add in our warm water and just start to bring that dough together. And then our olive oil, and then just form a really nice sticky dough. Oh, this dough is so soft, and just the olive oil from it, I think you're really gonna love this focaccia. And never store your olive oil near the stove or above the stove. You wanna keep it cool. And be sure to stay towards the end, right? Like I mentioned, I'm gonna have some food storage hacks, other tips, so don't miss those. Okay, so you're gonna take that dough that you've mixed with the water, the olive oil, shape it into a little bit of a ball, put some more olive oil over the top because you can never have enough olive oil, right? Put a little bit more olive oil over the top, and then you're gonna cover the bowl, you're gonna put it in the refrigerator. And you wanna keep it in the fridge for at least 12 hours. We're gonna do a slow cold fermentation. So keep it in the fridge for at least 12 hours, but no more than 24. Now for our second proofing. So take the dough out of the fridge. It's been there for about 12 hours. Take it out of the fridge, and you're gonna transfer it to a 9x13 pan that, guess what, has been coated with, guess what? More olive oil. Yes, more olive oil, because you just can never have enough. So coat a 9x13 pan with olive oil, and then we're gonna take that dough and put it into the pan. You wanna make sure when you're coating that pan that you get like all the nooks and crannies. And what is a cranny? I'm gonna have to Google that. Anyway, so get all the nooks and crannies, get that dough into the pan, and then you're gonna press out that dough. Using your fists, press out that dough, because the dough's gonna fight back. You wanna carefully press it and shape it fully to the pan. Speaking of fighting back, let me just tell you, I took a lot of Taekwondo as a kid. That's a whole other story as to why, but I took a lot as a kid. And check out this photo of me in my uniform holding swords. It looks really cool. I look kind of badass, but I'm gonna tell you, I was about to cry. These swords probably weighed half of what I did in that photo, and it was really hard to hold them. My arms were shaking, like I was holding back. They were not comfortable. It looks cool, but it was not cool at all. And stay tuned towards the end. After the credits, I'm gonna share with you my first street fight story, speaking of Taekwondo. So it's a hoot, you're gonna love it. So be sure to stay tuned to that. Okay, so after you've pressed out the dough with your fists, like I said, carefully press it out and shape it to the full shape of the pan. And you wanna make sure it's a nice even layer. You don't want one part of the dough to be higher than the other. Get a nice even layer, and then we're gonna do something that you're probably gonna be surprised about. We're gonna coat it with more olive oil. So pour some olive oil over the top, make sure the top of that dough is completely covered. And then we're gonna take our fingers and we're gonna dimple the dough. So you wanna take your fingertips and just press them into the dough, just pressing down at an angle and just working the whole dough. And I have to admit, this is oddly satisfying. It's like pressing into the dough is kind of gross, but also kind of soothing. It's kind of like a Kenny G song. So you just wanna sit there and dimple the whole dough. And once you do that, then we're gonna let that dough rest at room temperature for about an hour. While the dough is proofing for the second time, we're gonna make our veggie art. So you can make this veggie art as simple or as complicated as you want. You can make exactly what I did. You can do your own thing. do you. You can add ghosts, you can add witches, other magical creatures like Stevie Nicks, whatever. You can do your own thing. It's just, I want to show you how to make this one. So we're gonna chop up just finely dice some California green olives. And I say California green olives because you know what? I got them from a can, and all canned olives come from California. So we're gonna dice up these California green olives and we're gonna put them across lengthwise on the dough to start creating our grass, our grassy scene. Next we're gonna do is we're gonna take our sliced kale, lay that over the diced green olives, gives it a nice texture, a couple different hues of green. Then we're gonna take our red onion, the julienne red onion, and make our trees. And so with this, like what I did is I just kind of laid the onion slices flat and then tried to mostly have the onion side up, the red side up, and then press it into the dough to kind of shape those trees and those branches, and then fill in the trees with the leaves, which we're gonna use our parsley for that. Oh, and the parsley will bake off a little bit when you're cooking it, so you might wanna just figure out how much you wanna add on there flavor-wise. First visual, you can also add in, more after it's baked to kind of give that tree look. Oh, and stay tuned to the end because I have storage tips for parsley, cilantro, fresh herbs. You want to know how to store your fresh herbs and keep them around for weeks. You're going to want to catch that. And then we're going to get our skulls. So I personally like my biodynamically grown skulls from Transylvania, but store-bought is just fine. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so you're going to get 2 skulls out of every mushroom that you have. So you want to take the mushroom, you can make the eyes, just take a straw, poke the mushroom to make the eyes. Now, don't cut the mushroom until you've actually done the carving, because if you slice the mushroom first, it's probably gonna break in half. So poke the eyes, take a toothpick, you can carve the nose, you can carve the teeth. You can do this on each side of the mushroom, slice off the bottom part, slice it in half, and boom, you have 2 mushroom skulls. And how great do they look? We're gonna make some jack-o'-lanterns out of orange bell peppers, and we're gonna make a moon out of yellow one. Just cut those peppers down the side. And then we're gonna lay the cut slices flat. And if they don't completely lay flat, just cut off the edges that aren't laying flat. The reason for that is it'll just make it easier to carve. I like having jack-o'-lanterns that are kind of different shapes and sizes. I think it just adds a little bit of more character to the scene. So then we're gonna take our jack-o'-lanterns, we're gonna take our mushroom skulls and add those to the focaccia scene. Now, you can take some sliced green olives and use those for the stem of the jack-o'-lanterns. I don't know why I had to give you the visual for stem, but use those for the stem of the jack-o'-lanterns. We're gonna add in our moon from the yellow pepper, and I made a little spider out of a black olive with a little web from the onion. So add that to the focaccia scene. And then we're gonna take some black sesame seeds and just kind of create a little bit of a night sky, kind of filling in the top of that focaccia art. And I mean, look at this. It's just a really fun and festive focaccia. It's just a great bread recipe, fun for everyone unless you're gluten-free. It's a tasty Halloween-themed recipe that's not gonna give you diabetes, that you can enjoy as something else, not full of sugar. So I think you'll love it. It's a delicious focaccia, but also the visual, right? It's great to look at. So you wanna preheat your oven to 450 degrees. And once it's come up to temperature, you wanna bake the focaccia on the middle rack for about 25 minutes, just till that bread gets a nice golden brown. Like I mentioned with the parsley, the scene can change a little bit as things bake. Some of these ingredients will bake off. So you can always kind of touch them up afterwards with more fresh ingredients, or just add your scene at the end if you want to. It's however you want to do it. Luckily enough, California produces so much produce, you have many options. You can just do it however you need to. And then when that focaccia is done baking, take it out of the oven, pour, guess what? Pour more olive oil over the top, just a little bit, drizzle just across most of the bread. Don't worry, it's actually just gonna absorb into the bread. It's not gonna make it soggy. And then let it rest for about 5 minutes before you cut it up and serve it, and boom, Happy Halloween. Halloween focaccia. Once again, take a look at this. It's just a great visual. So, okay, you know what time it is? It's just the tip time. So first tip, parsley. So herbs, they're really easy to store. You just have to store them like cut flowers for the most part. So parsley, cilantro, when you bring that bunch home, trim off the ends, put it in a glass jar with some water and put it in the fridge. Depending on how your fridge works, you might have to bag it, put a little bag over the top, but like those fresh herbs will last 3 times longer if you store them that way. This works for parsley, cilantro, thyme. Basil doesn't like to be in the fridge, so typically you want to store that outside of the refrigerator, but it's just a really, really great way to keep those fresh herbs around longer. Oh, and guess what? You know what? Okay, so here's the thing. If you like this kind of information, now's the perfect time to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you like this video, drop a comment, that kind of thing, and let's get on to the rest of the tips. So, okay, flour. Flour is kind of tricky. It'll last about a year past the best by date if you store it in an airtight container in a cool, dark place. If you don't bake a lot though, if you don't use a ton of flour, put it in the fridge, put it in the freezer. Stored that way, your flour in an airtight container in the refrigerator or the freezer will last up to 2 years longer. So it's just a really great way to extend that flour if you don't use it all the time. Oh, and I was gonna talk to you about yeast, right? How to proof yeast. So any recipe that you're baking that requires yeast, you can actually, if you're not sure if the yeast that you bought, that dry active yeast is still active, here's what you do. Take the warm water that you're gonna be adding to the recipe, add in the yeast, and add in just a pinch of sugar. Set for about 10 to 15 minutes. If you come back and there's this like kind of brown, bubbly, foamy top to the water, that means your yeast is active. It's chomping on those sugars, it's creating what it does. It turns sugars into gas, right? So like that's what yeast does. So if it's creating that kind of brown, foamy top on top of the water, your yeast is good to go. And then you can just add what you created to your recipe. You don't have to redo it. So you just know that the yeast is active. If you love these kind of tips, I have hundreds of videos on how to store produce, food hacks for produce, peppers, spinach, apples, whatever you can possibly think of. I have a video on it, so go and check those out. And that's our video. I hope you enjoy it. Have a happy Halloween. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment down below. Give me some feedback. Like this video. If you like cooking in general, I release a lot of content all the time, so please subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Okay, so here's my story about my first street fight. Remember I was talking about Taekwondo? Okay, so I took a lot of Taekwondo as a kid, and I'm walking home from school. I'm on my block, like kind of like actually not too far from my house, and pretty much just kind of across the street. And this kid I don't think he was on my block, actually kind of like starts a fight with me. He was a couple years older, a couple inches taller, and the one thing that they teach you in Taekwondo, or I think probably most martial arts, is you can't throw the first punch. You can only you can only fight back once you've been hit. At least that's how I interpreted it. So this kid like picks this fight with me, and he just starts throwing punches at me, right? Like just kind of starts wailing on me. Well, I was really good at Taekwondo. Like I used to compete, I have trophies, like I used to punch above my level. I took second place as a 9-year-old against a 13-year-old. Like they bumped me up a division when I used to compete. So like I was pretty good at Taekwondo. And so this kid's throwing all these punches at me and I'm just blocking all these punches, like, you know, punch after punch, blocking. So this went on probably, I don't know, it felt like forever. It could have been like 4 hours, but it probably was like 10 minutes. Eventually the kid just gets tired because he's just punching at me, trying to like land a punch, and I'm just stopping every punch that he throws. So he just gets tired and like walks away. And I'm like, whatever, I don't have any skin in the game. So I just walk across the street and go home. And I see my parents looking behind the gate to our front porch, kind of watching what was going on, you know. And I walk up and my dad's like, hey, Jerry, like, why didn't you clobber the kid? And my dad asked this question because my parents quickly discovered that they regretted putting me in Taekwondo because when they went to go discipline me, I could get out of any move. Like I could get out of anything. I could wiggle, kick, fight my way out of anything. So they could no longer get a hold of me. So my dad knew exactly how well I could fight. So he was like, why did you not clobber this jerk who was trying to punch you? And I was like, well, they told us, Dad, like, you can't hit someone unless they hit you first. And he never hit me. Like, he kept trying and I kept blocking everything, but he never actually hit me. And my dad was like, he just didn't know what to do with me, right? He's like, they don't have to actually make contact. They just have to throw the first punch, you know? He's like, after the first punch, you can fight back. And I was like, oh, okay, now I know. So that was my first street fight. And basically, you know, the guy tried to clobber me. I blocked all the punches. He got tired and that was the end of it. Anyway, see you guys next time.